Welcome back to the Frontier Faith Podcast. Today, James Smith is with us, and we're super excited to have you here, James, our good friend and missionary in Albania. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. This is fun.
So today, we want to hear an update about how you're doing and what's life like in Albania. So give us an update and give us some insight for life in Albania, because you've and your family have been serving there for 2 years now, correct?
Yeah, 2.5 now.
Wow.
2.5.
So tell us, what is it like being a missionary in Albania?
Oh my goodness, that's such a huge question.
Yeah.
So late in my life, later in my life, I had a calling to go and work in Albania, as you saw, and we didn't know what that was going to be like, what we were going to do. We are intending to go work in a completely different place, doing completely different things that made a lot of sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we dove into Albania because it was a path that God was taking us on. And so, yeah, over the past 2.5 years, we've learned what that means and what it looks like.
Has it gone by fast, or has it felt like you've been a lot longer?
Both. Like, does a dream go by fast or slow? Like, it happens that fast, but it also takes all night long, but it feels short. So, yeah, being here feels like waking up either from the dream or into the dream.
Yeah.
And then it's like that never even happened. What is Albania? So I'm trying to conjure up these images of Albania, which is so different from here.
Yeah.
And try to reconcile those as both reality in my mind simultaneously. And it's weird. But what we are doing, we're in the city of Berat, Albania. Our calling, I already called it a calling, so I hope that's a comfortable term for us to use. It was simply us wanting to go and do something somewhere, to go and work, planning and preparing for it, and then having God show us an opportunity with a congregation in Berat, Albania, kind of an urban village, concrete apartment complexes, but people in Albania call it a village. We wake up to chickens and donkey carts and all of that. I had a group of people, about 80 people over the age of 50, that get together in this kind of storefront facility to study the Bible. And they've been doing that since maybe a couple of years pre-COVID. So they've been doing it, 6 years or so. The congregation has been meeting there, but they had a minister who was teaching them, an Albanian man who was leading them and teaching them. And at just a couple years of maturity, when only maybe 10% of them had even obeyed the gospel, that man left, and they were abandoned through the COVID period. The doors closed on the church, and so they literally begged the Albanian ministers, said, can somebody come and teach us? Can we grow and continue what we were doing? And there was just no feasible way to accomplish this until things opened up post-COVID. And there was one man who Mike and I both know, Chimmy. Chimmy and his wife Anila, who are the ministers in another town, another very thriving, busy, ministry-rich congregation on the coast in Durrës, who agreed because of Chimmy's past experience in Berat. This was where it's where he went to school when they forced everybody to leave their home and go live in the school. He was raised there. And so he agreed twice a week, Sunday nights and Thursday nights, to go and open the doors and continue the congregation. Bare minimum of activity. And so his brothers were concerned for him, the Albanian ministers, of course. And when they saw that we were wanting to come and work and do something possibly in the capital city, when teaching people the Bible using English, or English using the Bible, they said, consider our brother Chimmy and what he has involved. So we're in support of Chimmy. We're in support of this congregation of mostly older pensioners coming from the community. We're in support of the growth of that immediate group. that we didn't plant, we didn't seek them out even in the community and knock on their doors and call them to come. We just open the doors of the church building now, and they come organically and show up. And so we show up and we teach them while they're there. We teach them the gospel. We teach them how to be a family and what it means to be the church, and how to do things together. And so we've been doing that for the past 2.5 years, really learning what that means for us. What does it mean to show up to a congregation that doesn't know anything about how to be a church?
Wow.
Like they've never seen it on like even in media.
Yeah.
Like it's not a regular part of their life to know what a church is, but they just don't go. Like just nothing.
That's so interesting to me, and because I have a very limited exposure and experience to Albania. I only went there for 10 days, like 16 years ago, and I went there straight from South Africa to Albania, which I experienced what I describe as almost like a spiritual whiplash from being there, because in Albania or in South Africa, my 2 years there, I don't think I met really a single atheist during my time there.
Yeah.
Everybody believed something. There's a lot of wild stuff people believed, but like the spiritual world, there was definitely an awareness. It was kind of just like a clash of the titans spiritually all the time there. But then going to Albania, the spiritual landscape was almost like a nuclear bomb went off. It's just like devoid. It was like no struggle, silence, eerie,
spiritual dystopia.
Yeah. And so with you describing this like kind of blank slate, almost like I imagine little sprouts after a forest fire.
Yeah.
It's like this new beginning. And on a missional level, thinking of how many times we travel places and we'll see like a little pocket of 1970s churches in a foreign country, of American churches in another country. You have suit and tie, 3 songs, Lord's Supper, 2 songs, sermon, and it's just a bizarre cultural implantation that gets transferred, and so I'm intrigued and encouraged by this kind of blank canvas that you guys are working with there. So tell us more about how blank of a canvas you're working with.
Yeah. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah,
Can I say that? It's very different from what I used to do, which is working with youth. That's where my experience is, standing up in front of people teaching. And I could just take for granted that they came through, all those years of Bible class since cradle roll. And they know the stories, but you just have to stitch them together and tell them why these stories are important to them now. And so when I first showed up with these people, I started just doing that, and then very quickly realized that they didn't know those stories I was trying to stitch together, and had no reference for why I was trying to say they were important to them.
Do you remember at VBS? Don't you remember?
Noah. Yeah, and they're like, Noah, what's Noah?
Noah
You're
what?
Like, everybody knows Noah. Every non-Christian knows Noah. Everybody on the planet knows Noah, but they don't know Noah. They don't know Star Wars. They don't know Lord of the Rings. They don't know Noah, right? And they were just isolated for so long from this. But unlike Western media, they were militantly prevented from knowing about the gospel. I was just reading about it in preparation for a presentation tomorrow, about the history of how their dictator Hoxha extracted religion from their nation over a period of 10 to 15 years, until finally declaring 1960s mid that they were an atheist nation, and they followed atheist propaganda. That was in their constitution. Was the word atheist propaganda. And so I was looking at the census data, and there's this anomaly blip where you have 60% of the nation pre-World War II said they were Muslim, 20% Orthodox Greek, Orthodox, and then 10% Catholics coming through. And then during Hoxha, 100% atheist. They're like, we are all atheist. I am an atheist. I believe in no God but Hoxha. No God but Hoxha.
Wow.
And then it rebounds afterwards, and you just see this splintering of just confusion and lack of knowledge. And
is there any sort of receptivity? Is there any sort of we've been oppressed, And is there like a
So
desire?
that is immediate receptivity. There is immediate desire. Yeah, almost in defiance of their past.
Yeah.
They want to know what they were prevented from. Many of them. They're very proud of being multi-religious. Like, we used to be closed off and didn't allow anything, but now we accept everything.
Or a pluralist,
like,
yeah.
What are you teaching? We allow it. What's that person teaching? That's amazing.
Bring it on.
You guys can do this across the street from each other. Like, this is what we're wanting to do. Which, of course, has its own hazards and things that they're going to encounter in doing that. But they're open about that. It means there's no oppression now. There's nothing that we feel. Across Europe, there's places where, like in Hungary, we were, Slovakia. We were in Slovakia talking to a leader there of one of the two congregations in the country of Slovakia, and they were saying they have to have 50,000 people before they can register the church with the government.
Wow.
Because it's just impossible. They just make it impossible to register. Sure, there's religious freedoms, but it's not true religious freedoms. But Albania, we're just completely open. We can tell ourselves we're there. They allow us into the country. They invite us into the country, and we can tell them we're here working with this church, and the church is registered. And
so you don't have like threat from the system or the government in your guys' work there.
No. The closest thing we might have is there's large groups of people that claim Muslim, and then some of them are actually active Muslim, and this community is nearby, and I have suspicions they pull down some of our flyers from time to time and such, but it's not even worth mentioning because why that would happen in America but it's
So safety is often really a great deterrent for people going out and moving family out overseas and into Eastern Europe. Is Albania considered Eastern Europe, or is it just Europe?
It's just Europe.
It's just Europe.
It's Albania.
Yeah,
it's Albania.
It's Balkans. It's part of the Balkans. I think they would be considered separate from Eastern Europe.
Okay, that makes sense.
Former Soviet countries would be the Eastern Europe, and Albania never was part of the Soviet Union. But yeah.
So someone thinking like, wow, it's very risky what you guys have done, and I think it's a great act of faith of you guys going out as a family, and you work with Jimmy there, but you don't have necessarily another American team or felt like friends that you went over there per se together. So what would you say, or how speak to the team of 5 that you guys are, and raising your family in a foreign country in ministry of the Lord, and just because as important as it is doing this ministry in Albania, your ministry as a husband, as a father, is even superior or a more a higher priority for you. So you're doing all these things at once. So speak to marriage and family in mission.
Yep, and I was very keen to that in leaving. My wife and I, when we were presented this opportunity of Albania, it was just as crazy as anything else that was on the table. So we weren't resistant to it, but taking my family there, I wanted to have some boundaries, some back doors, some if this isn't what we think it is, if it doesn't feed our family, if it's actually destroying our family, we want to have a back door. So we committed ourselves to, first, Andrea and I went and did a survey trip, just the two of us, walked through the country, met with the leaders, found out whether or not the leaders truly wanted us to be there.
Right.
And were they actually the church? Is this before we show up with my family and having burnt down our life? And I tell people this was our trip. It was our survey trip. We came back from this, and somebody asked us. They asked Andrea's mom, I think, was like, "So, are you gonna go? Are you gonna go and do this?" And then Andrea's like, "I don't know. We haven't talked about it." And I'm like, "What do you mean we didn't talk about it? Like, we're gonna go. Like, we went on this trip to look for red flags." And so, are there any of these things? Do we feel safe there with our children? And if we don't, what's preventing us from going was kind of the thing. But my children laugh because I tell people we went on this survey trip looking for red flags and didn't find any. And they're like, you go to Skanderbeg Square in the middle of Tirana, and the Albanian flag is a gigantic red flag. And we're like, no red flags here. This is perfect. And
cover your eyes.
Yeah.
The country is a red flag.
Country itself is a red flag.
That's hilarious.
But we didn't see anything there, but we still stepped into it. And I'm kind of doing this as like, this is what we felt was wise, or if somebody else is considering this and wants to do it, I think it worked out for us. We still told ourselves we're going to go, committing to a year and a half. That gave us a year to be there, to get our footing and to work. And if we were not being effective, or if we were being a hindrance to the work in some way, or if we saw our children drifting out to sea, after a year, we could start a 6-month plan to transition to something else.
Wow.
And it was so, I don't know, shocking. It was like, this was planned. It was written down. I thought about it and prayed about it. And then like a year and a half passed and was still going. And then I remembered, we had that year and a half
You had
plan.
a plan.
Like, what did we ever do with that?
That's
and
not
it was
up
like,
on us.
no, there was no thought of like, is this actually a purpose? It's like so much more than what we thought we were going to be able to be doing. So much more than like, are my children drifting away? Like, no, I see my children drifting in. We were becoming a team. We're working together. And my children, I would be taking my children from a mission field of theirs.
Oh, wow.
In order, if we were to do something else. There's still difficulties with our children. I still try to be careful with them. It's hard. We have to be very deliberate about relationships and finding them people and getting them connected. And they have to be deliberate. They have to be proactive. Clara, my oldest, she's 16, and she's just so good about scheduling meetings with these different people, and different people that she sees will feed her in different ways. She's like, this is a person that I want to know, young, old, like she just is very active in that. So that, as opposed to losing my family in this, I feel like I have really saved them.
Wow, that's powerful.
In many ways. Andrea and I are closer than we've never like struggled and felt like we had a difficult relationship, but now we're closer than ever. Just and we've learned things about each other, and we are all 5 of us, just completely different people.
Wow.
Ourselves.
So you had mentioned at the beginning that you feel a sense of calling there.
Yeah.
And I find it powerful that often the Lord doesn't lead us to places we already want to go, because you don't really need to be led. You're already going that direction. Yeah. And you mentioned just sort of some course correction, like we're going this direction. Oh, actually, no, we're going to Albania now. Well, now 2.5 years later, what are some ways you've seen James grow? Like, how are you different?
Yeah. So it's interesting looking at Berat, Albania, and the work in Berat, Albania, and the only other mission experience directly that I've had was through the AIM program in Mariupol, Ukraine. And once being there and looking at Berat as a mission field and seeing what the needs were, I think church needs are the same in many different places. Sure. They all follow a pattern, but I was like, oh, I've seen this before. I know what's going on. But I played a very different role there. And I've always been a support person. I used to call myself a professional younger brother. Like my brother would get stuck on a level of a video game, and he would throw the controller, and I would play my way through it and then give it back to him, and he would play along. And so that's kind of been my career path. I was like that as an engineer, and then I saw, okay, I'm going to be helping Jimmy. I'm going to be working with this church. I know how to support somebody. Over a year and 2.5 years, I have had to grow into an older brother. And really take charge of stuff myself, because of the work, because I'm in support of Chimmy, trying to make Chimmy not burn out.
Yeah.
But the way that I do that is by working throughout the week with this group of people that need to grow and learn and be something that doesn't just drag him and burn him out. And so I have to be the man in that situation. Me and my family, we're together. We become the man. But also Albanian culture forces me to change. Albanian culture is very. I can say this because I think it's a compliment to Albanian culture. It's very masculine. It's very strong. The masculine culture, the leadership of the man, the Albanian leaders get together and they're amazing and they butt heads like little baby goats and you have to be strong. And so I came in as a younger brother, like the little guy, and I'm just like, whatever you say and I'll do it. I don't have my own opinion. I'm coming from an outside culture.
Yeah.
Show me what your culture does and what you do and I will support that. And I think they saw me as this weak little runtling goat for a long time. And I have discovered that I have to be a baby goat and come into these situations with people with my own opinion, even though it's stupid, even though I really don't care. But I have to be firm on it and have an opinion and state it and butt heads with them all the same. And then we respect each other and we're men. And so that's pushed me way outside my comfort zone.
And that's been effective? In those relationships?
Yeah. And I feel like I'm growing to be more effective because I'm working together with Albanians in the Albanian way.
Yeah.
Which I'm not a natural Albanian, but I do also respect the fact that God called me to go work amongst Albanians.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I'm a little bit different from them, and so I have to be strong in saying, okay, I actually have something to offer in this situation. Let's do something. They're very do it now in a very, very good way. That's making me become a do it now person.
Yeah.
Like, here's a problem. Let's fix it. Let's solve it. Whereas I've always been the person who researches a vacuum for 3 months before I buy it and then never use it. Like I need to plan. I need to think it through and figure out all of the different possibilities and solve them ahead of time. And so we're finding this balance. I can bring that to Chimmy and we can work together as a do it now and a planner and then become more do it now and more planner.
Well, it's like the old saying that Lord doesn't call the qualified, qualifies the called, or equips the called. Like, if he's called you there, which he has, it's very evident. He's called you, the whole team of 5 to Albania, that he's in the team gifting you all with different gifts to accomplish the work.
They brought gifts with them. They're using those, but also being equipped to do what needs to happen in the situation.
Language, schools, what's that like for you guys?
Language. My kids are homeschooled in the same program that they were while they were here. That's amazing. And so they're doing very, very well. I'll take some varies off of that. They're doing well with school. Our schedule is just nuts. It's a nuts schedule, and so, but they're having to stretch and work their way through that. It's not an easy thing. It's very deliberate. Everything has to be deliberate. It just doesn't happen on its own. And then language is another thing that just has to be deliberate. And language is super, super hard. It's its own branch of the language tree. There's nothing related to it. But more difficult than that, the biggest challenge with Albanian is there's so few people learning Albanian that there's so few resources to do it. It's not on Duolingo. All of the really high class language learning institutes and things that are out there, just they don't deal in Albanian. So it took us a long time, a lot of research and a lot of trial and error to find what resources would actually make forward progress in this, and to get up a learning curve so that we could then actually be out in the community talking to people and doing things and making progress and not just being totally confused, totally in the dark. And so that's been good. We found one person who is an English teacher at the local elementary school, and she teaches my daughters Albanian during the week. And then we also, Andrea and I and our oldest have an online tutor that teaches us, and that's a very recent thing that we found her, and it literal godsend. Like we've been
really?
looking for somebody who was gentle and patient and knowledgeable of Albanian and could teach an English speaker. And yeah, we all cried when we said goodbye at our end of our last class, and I'm looking forward to continuing this because we're just like breaking through. And I'm at a point now where I can understand a lot, especially if I know the context of what's happening. I can piece together things that are going on, especially in the church. Somebody's saying a prayer, I can follow what they're praying about, and I can figure out a lesson in a verse. If somebody quotes a verse, I can pull it together and be like, oh, I think I know where they're at, and track it down. Forming sentences is difficult because you can't just think of the English sentence and then translate every word of the English sentence and then speak it. Even if you can do that, which is difficult, you'll speak a sentence that isn't the way they communicate that thought. And so you have to just know, how do they communicate this, and then say it that way. And so it's even worse than like, oh, you form the sentence and then say it backwards. And no, it feels like you're speaking. All of Albania feels like going back in time, and their language feels like you're speaking some ancient dialect. The way they speak, if you translate it directly, it starts sounding like Shakespearean English. Just their terms and the way they say things. It's a blessing and curse language, so it has these very formalized things that you attach into the language and how you talk, which is good and bad because it means that there's very formulaic ways, like this is the standard greeting for this situation, and so you can know that and go through the programming, and if you say something different, people get confused. But you have to know those things, and it's also limiting because you're trying to communicate more than just the standard greeting.
What's been your biggest whoops?
Oh, biggest,
like foot and mouth.
I don't know. There's so many things that are off limits to us as English speakers. We are coming into the language with an accent, and they're not used to hearing their language with an accent. They have about 5 letter combinations that sound the same to us. And then we say these ones this way in English, like our L sound or a ch sound or an u, like we say them this way, but they have that way and this way. But if you interchange those in a word, you'll end up with a totally different thing.
Nice.
That will be just totally embarrassing to you. The common one is Djali and Djali. Djali means like little boy. It's my son. They claim coincidentally Djali also means demon. He's a demon. So I'm like, oh, here's my little demon, because that's the English L, the Djali. But they have a different Djali that I can't do with my tongue. And as many times as somebody tells me and my tongue doesn't do it, I can't even hear them doing it to replicate it. And yeah, it means little boy and demon. So we do that all the time. We found out just leaving that the word, somebody was teaching us like the word enough, like I've had enough of this, you can have the rest. And the word enough is a very profane word when we say it. And everybody was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. We're like, no, I can't say that word. And they're like, try. Yeah, I don't think it's okay. And then we say it, and they're like, never say that word again. Never say enough. They're like, say this other word, which unfortunately is like 18 syllables. You're like, okay, we'll learn that one.
Better to risk that one.
Yeah. But that's just, but so the growth, like, okay, let's update on the church. The church is learning how to communicate with me, and that's been an amazing thing. These older people that just came and they would just rattle off things to us, and then the very first Sunday, and we're with them, and they tell us how to say certain things, and then by Thursday, they're wanting us to remember it and speak to them. And we're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I did not retain that. That's not how you learn a language.
Yeah.
And in order to talk to me, you're going to have to learn things I understand and speak to me in those words. And and they're learning it.
Wow.
So as I'm learning their language, they're learning a different language as well,
That's
which is how
beautiful.
to speak to James, and they want to speak to
Its
James,
own
right?
language, yeah.
And so they get excited every time we come and we can understand more and we can say more to them. Like that is a huge gift to
Yeah.
them, especially these older people here in the church. And then there's a huge gift to me that they're being patient and they're talking through and they sit with my children and try to communicate.
And Jimmy's the only one who speaks English there.
So Chimmy and Anila, and out of respect for a man named Zulfo, he also speaks English, but sometimes I wish he wouldn't try. But he's a wonderful guy, and I've given up laughing about this. You can picture like an old Albanian man in his fedora hat who comes and says, "James, good morning to you," and you're like, "Oh, Zulfo, you can say that in Albanian," and I understand. But then I realized I'm like, he was a young man when it was outlawed to speak
Wow.
English. Like they were told America's going to come and destroy you.
Wow.
Like this is the big enemy, and I was driving with him the other day, and he reaches in his bag and he pulled out this little plastic bag and undid it, and it was a worn English Albanian dictionary, and he opens it up very delicately and goes through and then like comes up with a word, and I'm like, this is where he's getting English. Like
Wow.
he shouldn't be doing that, but he is. And so we have him.
That's wonderful.
That's
We have him.
church.
And the
That's
young
church.
people in the community speak English. There's a young girl that's very close to my girls named Anna Maria, and she was very quiet at first, even though we knew she understood us. She just was intimidated speaking English.
Mhm.
But now she's just like come out of her shell and she's comfortable with us. She's like a part of our family, really.
Wow.
And she can translate with young kids when we do a Bible class and things, even though most of the young kids, the younger the child, the better they speak English, because that's their ticket out of the country to learn English. So we encounter little like 6-year-olds that speak like perfect fluent English, and it's very disorienting.
Mhm.
But yeah.
So one of the coolest and maybe sometimes I think hardest things to discern in foreign missions is seeing the kingdom of God being cross-cultural,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how these cultures, American culture, Albanian culture, and these other cultures are unique and storied and have pros and cons, but the gospel takes root in all of them.
Yeah.
And then when you get I think the blessing and privilege of getting to interact in multiple places, that can give you some insight into kind of this golden thread of the gospel that's woven into these different cultures. And then when you travel back and forth, you can see maybe what are some things we do that are cultural, or some things are traditional, and then what some are some things that are spiritual, and kind of de-blur the lines between those things. So I'm curious for your insights as to what are some things now, having served in the United States, in Ukraine, in Albania as a family, what are you seeing as like common spiritual denominators, and then other things that maybe over prioritized in certain places, and just to compare and contrast the
Yeah.
kingdom in these different cultures.
Yeah. And it's constantly a puzzle, right? It's constantly coming into a situation and saying, this doesn't make sense to me, or it's uncomfortable. But is it uncomfortable because of me and what I'm used to, or is it uncomfortable because it doesn't like match the pattern of the church? Should I step in and say something, or should I allow this to continue? Like, where is it? And I'm very sensitive to it because the church is so young
Yeah, exactly.
and has such little influence. I'm their major influence.
Yeah.
Chimmy's teaching and the Albanian churches across Albania. But they're looking at me and saying, how do we do this? What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, great. whatever I do, they replicate, and then the next generation will replicate, and after that, it becomes rule and law. And it was just because I had to sneeze one day. Like what is
Like
what does this do?
ministerial butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but I've been thinking a lot about what I preached on Sunday. Like the gospel is actually like simple, and we overcomplicate it. Um, it's people coming together, and forming a family. People who are not a family, and family means forgiving across lines, communicating across lines, showing value to somebody else. And so the consistent thing is family that should not exist. There are castes in Albania, unspoken caste groups that are not supposed to interact. Or in an honor shame culture, there are people who have something in their past, and they have been ostracized and kicked out of their little community where everybody knows each other and they all live here for the rest of their life, and something you've done in your past carries with you forever. But you come into the room and the church interacts. You're just as welcome here as that person. And these are things that I hear. Like as the church starts behaving as the church, this is how they start behaving. And then it affects them as they say, you don't know this, but out in the world, I'm not treated the same way as I am in here. And we have to apologize and say, I'm really sorry for that, because you are worth respecting in this room and outside of this room. But they're starting to do that. And then as they're respected, they respect others, right? And they start showing value for them. And because they recognize that, they're coming to recognize that this is the power of the message, not just the room, not just this thing we call the church. It's the message of Christ is changing people. Yeah,
it really gets at the heart of, the gospel is so much bigger than just like a transactional fire insurance.
Yeah.
It's like, if I do the right things, I'll avoid hell. It's like, actually, it's, what does a multi-ethnic, multinational, multilingual body look like under the rule and reign of Christ, where your identity is rooted in Him and not in yourself and not in your class, not in your and that's contagious, is what you're describing. People see that like, oh, there's a place, because we're all wired to that we desire belonging and community. That's how we were created. And so
yeah. There's still cultural things that I'm seeing now that I've made the choice. This is cultural to Albania, and it shouldn't exist, and we need to break this down.
Yeah.
And so one that we've been working on recently is, we have, like I said, there's these 80 people. If they all come together on like New Year's, we have 80 of them in the room, and that's 80 different families. So there are these older people. Many of them have families, at least a wife or a husband, but across the board, the wife doesn't come or the husband doesn't come. We have a third of them as men, 2/3 of them are women. Either the husband's staying home for the men or the wives. And we've tried to figure out, like, what is this? So the first person who finds the church, it's theirs. Like, this is mine. My wife stays home. The church is my thing. Or the wife found the church. That's her thing. I think it's usually the man.
Yeah.
That's her thing. I don't go. She goes to church. That's not.
Where does that come from?
It's like a hobby that they pick, and they just kind of respect the hobby.
Yeah. And they respect the hobby. It's a book club they go to or something, right? And so we meet them. They're like wonderful people. The other part of these relationships, but for whatever reason, they've decided which one of them is going to come be a Christian.
Wow.
And so we've been attacking this mindset to try to break through it and be like, look, like Chimmy and Anila, James and Andrea, like we both come, we work together. This is a family activity of becoming a family. The salvation that's offered to you is also offered to your wife, and why wouldn't you want her to come and
more than a hobby
with you? Yeah. And so we've been doing things to try to encourage. I'm really excited, actually, because like these little steps of progress. Zulfo, who I mentioned, his wife now is coming regularly and walks in the door and waves at everybody like this. And we're like, oh, she's becoming a part. And then another man has now started bringing his wife, and she's clearly interested and starting to feel involved. But it's just like these little baby steps.
We've been going through First Corinthians the last few months, and what you're describing is very reminiscent of what Paul writes about, of being married to an unbeliever and the marriage and the children being made holy through that marriage, and just how you have this responsibility in that marriage to try to save that person. And it's encouraging to see and hear these marriages with kind of water over rock, the Spirit, starting to ripple out into those families. And thinking of First Corinthians and you being back here, I'm seeing a lot of encouraging parallels, and some of this we've already touched on. I want to read 1 Corinthians 16 and starting verse 9. Paul talks about, for a wide door for effective work has been opened to me, and there are many adversaries, and how both those are happening at the same time. So it's just seeing some parallels with your life of a wide door open to Albania of all five of you. But also there's some struggles. It's not just the open doors are not always smooth sailing.
Yeah.
You guys have had some difficulties.
Some demons.
Some
little demons.
And whether they're cultural struggles or spiritual struggles or personal struggles, ministry and this mission is happening, but it also isn't just always smooth sailing, so to speak.
Yeah. We just had our national lectureship, much like Alaska had the Alaska lectureship. There's lots of similarities between the church's connectivity and behavior between Alaska and Albania. I think it's cool to see those. But we just had our lectureship a week after you did here in Alaska, and the speaker brought this lesson that I thought was very beautiful, talking about the church. And the church being two things simultaneously. Is the church this group of sinners that all have done wrong and all are at fault and all needing Jesus, just like a group of like messed up people. And then on the other hand, the group being the sanctified, perfect bride of Christ.
Yeah.
Like both of those things simultaneously, yes. And it was very encouraging to me, because there's such an immaturity of the church that we're working with in these baby steps. Literally, I feel like we're walking a baby and learning to walk along with them, right? But this is like such a great potential and so much power and so many significant things that are coming from this. But they all come through so much effort and back steps and failures, and you try and you pray over this thing and then it falls apart, but this other thing grows through it that you weren't even paying attention to, and you praise God because you're a part of this thing that's perfect and beautiful, and it's a room full of people just like yourself.
Sounds like
just toddlers.
Working with milk and versus meat. And how that's not a bad thing. That's not a sad thing. That's a very spiritual, natural thing of beginning with milk, but they will grow. And just like being a parent, you don't get a lot of sleep those first few years, but it's worth it, and you guys are doing it, and the Lord's doing it through you. With you, this is your first time back as a family, right? You've come back to the United States once so far, to present for.
We came back once.
Primary week.
That's right.
2 summers ago. Yeah.
Okay.
We came back.
But this is the first time back as a unit of 5, right?
We were all back for that.
For the first one?
We had been gone for only 8 months when we came back, but it was because of a wedding, so
that's right.
It was really too early to come back. This is a little bit different thing. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of the next verse here in 1 Corinthians that says, when Timothy comes, see that you put him at ease among you, for he is doing the work of the Lord, as am I. So let no one despise him. Help him on his way in peace, that he may return to me, for I'm expecting him with the brothers. So looking at the early church and this precedence of ministers, of missionaries, Timothy being a preacher, um, being traveling, rotating around, and Paul encouraging the church to receive him in a certain way. Particularly, we see here to put him at ease among you. So, as you're returning here, I hope that you're being put to ease here.
Yeah.
But what's it like now returning back to, the Shire of sorts? So coming back after you've been out and you're going to be going back again.
Mhm.
What emotions or what thoughts, what's it been like being back? Because I think of this, put them at ease. We're not told to do things that just happen anyways.
Yeah.
So the church being told to put him at ease is that there's a possibility Timothy's not going to be put at ease or he's going to be despised. And so I'm curious, as to someone who is freshly returning and passing through and going to be sent off again, how's your mind and heart at this junction?
Yeah. So my mind and heart, well, I'm very full during this trip. It's also very intense. Just having a conversation like this, I don't have conversations like this in Albania. There are some very strong brothers that I look up to, and I have deep conversations with them, and I learn a lot from my Albanian brothers. But there's always a cultural barrier and a language barrier, and so this just comes at us quick, and so it's been very overwhelming. But it's positive. It's positively overwhelming. We spend a lot of our time in Albania alone, or at least feeling very alone. And maybe I'll be honest. The last time we came back, I told you we came back too soon. It had just been 8 months, which for us was an eternity.
Yeah, I bet.
But for people here, we were still just James, Andrea, and the kids,
Mhm.
and we were doing things. My kids especially came back with expectations of, like they had changed. They were different people,
Yeah.
but then they were being seen as either not having changed, they were the same people again coming into it, or they had been forgotten.
How was your trip? Yeah.
Yeah, like that. And yeah, and people were still trying to remember where we were and things, which I understand. I get it. But this has been a different trip to us. It seems like there's been a lot of work and prayer and mutual expectations being laid on both sides that have made our interactions very strengthening. I hope on both sides. I've found, I don't know how this connects, but I'm just going to do it anyway. So I've found advice, not for myself. I'm not looking for this for myself, but I'm trying to give people some advice while they interact with missionaries, or how do we put them at ease? What is it? What does it mean to put a missionary at ease? And sometimes I think people maybe try and it's not the right thing. And so we've done our research of like what is it we're needing? What is it we're thirsty for? And what is it that feeds that? And when we get inside our heads while we're alone and we're looking at things and we get overwhelmed with the failures or our expectations and what we're trying to do and the dead end roads that we're going down, and then somebody comes into that and maybe we don't know who they are even, but they say, "Oh, I see what you're doing. I see that you're doing it for Christ. It's effective. Keep doing it." And that statement alone is powerful enough to keep us going for months. It overcomes so many of the lies and the doubts that just ricochet in our head. And I wake up in the middle of the night with voices in my head just telling me, you shouldn't be here. You're not the one who's supposed to be doing this. You're not being effective. What do you even think you're doing? A better person would be speaking language by now. A better person would be able to have handled that situation in a better way so that those two people would not continue fighting. A better person would have been able to prepare this. I'm just going to keep giving you these. A better person would have been preparing the lesson that was given to the men so that man wouldn't have said, I'm done I'm done with the church. I'm Muslim again. I can't take this message. I could have presented it in a different way. Now I pass him every day and he says respect to me, but then he also says praise Allah, and I could have done something differently. Why am I even here? And then somebody steps into it and just says this simple truth: I see what you're doing. It's effective. Keep doing it. And it's a truth that I know in my heart, but it's just like it's a whisper, and it's my own voice, and it's hard to hear.
I wonder
Yeah,
how much new information Barnabas really told Paul throughout their times together.
Yeah.
But just having that reinforcement, the encouragement in ministry is not just like a nicety, but really a requirement for long-term ministry.
Yes.
Watering.
And for someone like Paul, who has direct revelation and inspiration from God to be sent with the Spirit, encouragement, I don't think that was just an isolated Paul need. I think that's what we're seeing here of Timothy needing this, because this is something that people that have this gift in the body, there's a way the body's supposed to interact together. And it's in this way of encouragement, of support, and if we were doing something wrong, we would want someone to encourage us, gently or rebuke us rightly. But that encouragement, that affirmation, is quite priceless. I'm glad you're identifying that.
And that's definitely what it is. And I like that you bring up Barnabas. I see Barnabas's role now in Scripture, and I'm like, oh, this was a powerful man, right? Like Paul was Paul because God sent Barnabas, and what Paul needed was somebody who would come to him and see him and say, hey, you feel this way, you think you're worth this much, but that's not true. It's not true at all. Look, remember, you used to be this, now you are this, and you're going to continue doing that.
And I'm going to go with you.
Things. Yeah, and I'm going to go with you so I can continue telling you these things. And then their big conflict was the fact that he was like, hey, I see this other young man and I'm telling him the same things. And Paul's like, I don't see it in him, right? Like, I don't see it, but it makes sense. Barnabas is like, no, I tell people the truth of what they're doing and what they're capable of becoming in the future. And it's huge.
It seems like Paul comes back around and realizes John Mark is actually quite useful and valuable.
Send him to me.
And that chief of sinners, struggle of his, and maybe projecting that onto others, or there might have been a point of tension there. Well, another thing I see paralleling that your life is showcasing here in 1 Corinthians is, or possibly you can tell me, is verse 12. Now concerning our brother Apollos, I strongly urged him to visit with you and the other brothers, but it was not at all his will to come now. He will come when he has opportunity. And I don't really remember, I've never really dwelt on this passage much before, but it's cracking me up because you have Apollos being urged by Paul to go there. And Paul's like, or Apollos is like, nah, I don't want to do, I don't think that's what I need to do. And Paul is respecting that. And if an apostle was urging me, because as far as we know, Apollos is not an apostle, and he's definitely not one of the, it seems, inspired ones.
Not one of the 12.
Not one, and in the role of an apostle, as far as we know. But Paul's urging him to do so. I'm sure he strongly considered it, but for him to be able to say, that's not where I need to be right now. And
Paul's kind of in the denial phase too. He's like, he'll come
at his convenience.
He doesn't know it yet.
At the right opportunity. And you talking about having some horns as a baby goat and starting to, butt against some of the other men there in a growing way. I'm just curious, as you are in a position of leadership, do you find maybe too many oars in the water at times, where you have to, whether it's people here or far, people having, thinking you ought to maybe be doing this or that, and you have to say, no, we're going to actually do this instead. Have you found yourself in any similar situations?
Yeah, there are times like that. I thankfully have never felt that kind of pressure from outside of Albania, from
Okay.
supporters and family. I'm very blessed to have people that I feel are very open-minded to watch and very trusting of me, maybe to a degree that I don't trust myself. But they're very, very encouraging in that within the work in Albania, there's so much work and so few workers. And there are lots of opportunities that I've had to follow some advice that I was given by my in coordinator Tim Burrow, who's now the president at Sunset, and I've sat down and I've talked to him since then to be like, look, now I'm doing this, give me some advice. And he told me that a missionary is defined by what they say no to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been like, okay, that alone is just permission to say no to things, but also to say you're saying no to things so you can define your work. You know your goal, you know your purpose, and you know the spirit that is leading you.
Right.
Spirit is leading you. And so you then protect and be loyal to that. And so there's things that we've have to say no to, or we can participate at this level if that's a help. We'll participate at this level, or other things. And then the flip side of that is to acknowledge that other people are doing the same. And you can't make judgments on somebody else because this is the most important thing, and the Spirit's telling me it's the most important thing. So why are you not making this the most important thing? It's like, no, you have to trust that the Spirit is leading them, and they're making these same choices.
That's probably how Paul felt.
They say no to you, and you're like, okay, I have no offense to that. God bless you and what He does lead you to do. And so I haven't, to be clear, I haven't felt abandoned in that way in my loneliness. Loneliness in my aloneness in the work. It's fine. It makes sense. And my family and I, we are working together. I haven't expected other people to come and be instrumental or do something in some certain way. And then also looking back at America, I feel sometimes people see what I'm doing and they feel this judgment about it because I made a decision to give up something that they have to do something that they're not doing or something. And I worry that maybe that hurts some of my relationships or something, that people think that that's a judgment, because I don't think
like you've
that at
gone pro.
all.
You're so spiritually went pro.
It's leveled up.
I think it is true that we all are given something and it's placed in front of us, and then at a certain point God will come and He'll ask us for it, and we should be open to give that. But God's going to come and ask us all for different things, for different purposes, for different reasons. And I trust that when He comes to Mike and asks for Mike to give, Mike is giving, right? It doesn't look the same. Jesus says it while He's with disciples before He leaves, and they're like, "What about that guy? How's his life going to be?" And He's like, "I'm going to deal with him the way that I deal with him. You just pay attention to you."
Yeah.
Peter and John, and it's that same thing. I do feel honored that God came to me and said, "Hey, you see this American dream you have? I want you to give it up, right? I want you to give that up." And I think, why not that guy? Why did you ask me? Why did you come all the way across the world to the other side of the world to Alaska to get a guy to go and work in Berat, Albania? There are probably other people that could be doing this better. And I've struggled with God through that, and just had to accept, no, God, this is the one who God asked to do it.
It provides shape and form to the idea of calling.
Yeah,
I think sometimes we got to get confused with the idea of calling as sort of like this, I don't know, still small voice, like I feel called to the beaches of, it's like, maybe, I mean, the missionaries beaches in Hawaii too, but oftentimes we are led because we don't want to go somewhere, or it's not on our radar.
Yeah.
Maybe we're open to it. We shouldn't even know about an opportunity, and
I mean, just watch years from now, one of us end up in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You never know.
It would be the pattern for me to do it. Steve Byrne, who left Alaska to work in Albania and then
Then goes to Hawaii. That's right.
I'm like, oh, it must be the next thing.
That's it.
Now correct
All
me
the
if I'm
path.
wrong, though. You've had even like a series of unmet expectations or unpredicted changes with this calling. Because if I remember right, your plan was to go to Ukraine.
100%. Yeah.
And then things hit the fan with Russia going over there and
Yeah.
everything that's currently horribly going on. And then you guys went from planning to go to there with working with some dear friends and people to then discovering or God showing, actually, I want you to go to Albania. So not only giving up the American dream, but then the thing you're giving up for.
But our dream of working for God.
Yeah. And then, so layers of unmet expectations that He's carried you through.
It is. But that's the pattern of God. This isn't surprising.
Right.
Yeah.
It's frustrating sometimes.
It happened to Paul.
It's surprising when it happens to me.
Yeah.
It happens.
I'm going over here, Spirit says, actually.
Yeah. And then, like I said, like once I opened myself up to the idea and started looking at it and actively seeing, like, what does this look like? What if I do it? I saw all these parallels of where God had been preparing me to do it, and it actually did make sense. The thing that made no sense whatsoever. I have no skill in this. I have no experience in this. I don't speak this language and know this culture. Find it on a map. Whatever. I can't drive a car in this country. and then I'm like, no, I have experiences that prepared me for this and make it actually a feasible thing.
Wow.
But it took time to see that.
I want to wrap up with this, the last bit here of chapter 16 of I urge you, brothers, you know that the household of Stephanas were the first converts in Achaia, and that they have devoted themselves to the service of the saints. Be subject to such as these, and to every fellow worker and laborer. I rejoice at the coming of Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaeus, because they have made up for your absence, for they have refreshed my spirit as well as yours. Give recognition to such people. And so I think of you and your family deeply in this, as people have devoted themselves to the service of the saints, and the importance of giving recognition. I know that you guys are quite humble and that you don't like the spotlight of sorts. You don't want the elevation, but it's not elevation, it's recognition, identifying that the Lord has been at work through you guys. And so with part of this podcast, but also just through our friendship, we've been friends for I can't even remember meeting you. It's been that long, which is awesome. And it's amazing and encouraging to see not only what the Lord is doing in Alaska, but out from Alaska and rippling around the world. And the word missionary is not in the New Testament, but I see these templates of these people and these families. The household of Stephanas has devoted themselves to the service of the saints, and it's like this full-time devotion. You guys are all in that, and that doesn't mean that you're spiritually superior than other parts of the body, but you have a unique function in the body, and the scriptures teach us here to give recognition to such a people. And so it's important to look at the scriptures in our faith to have a discernment of what makes such a people. And it's those that are devoted, fully devoted. And you guys are giving us a good example of what that can look like. And so thank you. We're excited to see what the Lord continues to do. And in any way we can, we want to go with you.
So for our listeners, things we can pray about on the horizon as you here for a few weeks and then about to head back.
Yeah.
What are some things we can be praying for?
Yeah.
For you and Albania.
Yeah. Well, as you guys know, our ministry is about to change in big ways. 2 days after we get back to Albania, we have teammates coming, AIM team. And you guys know, we've all been Amers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to increase the capacity of our work. That those things that I've been saying no to, I've really been putting them off until I maybe found some capacity, and Amers will increase our capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have this menu of work that we're going to start exploring. And as you know, in ministry, it's going to be a work of figuring out what works and what doesn't. There's going to be this, failure rate as we jump into these ministries, and we will be learning and being effective in the work of like how we are being changed. And so we're going to hit that pretty intensely this summer. It's intimidating to me as somebody who's a professional little brother. I'm going to now be a leader in a different way than I'm used to. And I'm trying to figure that out. I think about my AIM time in Timborough and how much I respect him and everything he did. And I'm like, he was the perfect coordinator. And then I'm going to be a coordinator to an AIM team. I'm going to do nothing he did. I'm going to be a completely different person. I know it already, and I'm just not going to try.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to be who I am.
Good.
God's sending me Amers. I'll do that. But prayers for that. Prayers for
And you have
us
two guys, 2 girls?
2 guys, 2 girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 4 of us. We're maxing out, and then have to figure out by next year when we get another team, Lord willing, what we'll do with that. So it's a lot of exciting changes there. But I think that's going to be very, very strengthening. We're working with older people, of course. Bringing young people into this work means that we're going to be reaching out to the community, to families, to youth and teenagers, which we've been really wanting to retain more of them and have more constant contact with. So I'm excited about helping with that. And reaching out and unifying the church in Albania, the connections across the country is a very important thing for the church, and I'm excited about bringing Amers into that and continuing that. But transportation is very difficult. We're fundraising for a van right now so that I can take my family and Amers to these youth events that we have maybe every 2 months. The church is getting together to do something somewhere, and working directly with Chimmy means that we have an influence in a work that's happening in Durrës, an hour and a half away, that I'd like to get people involved with. But it's going to be a lot of work, in a challenge. Pray for the church in Berat. In their growth. Our long-term goal, our mission, is to work ourselves out of a job in Berat. And so that means there would be somebody, ideally a young Albanian family, somebody who would come to Berat and minister there. But that's culturally like walking down the opposite direction on one-way road.
Yeah.
That's a big thing to ask a young Albanian to come this way out to a village to devote themselves. But there's people whose hearts are there. So we're working to start a Bible school within Albania. The Albanian leaders are excited about this and working on it. They've done stuff in the past. That's where the Albanian leaders came from, was this school that used elements of American schools and British schools, and then self-taught each other to prepare each other and go to these 12 different congregations across the country. And so we're trying to restart that. So prayers for that, and for that to happen fast enough to retain and give a hopeful path to some of these young people, and that someday one of them would come and we would be able to work with them in Berat and then hand things off for them. And then the future of whatever that would mean for us, we're leaving to God, but we're investing a lot in the country, and we would love to maybe go work for the Bible school if the Bible school's up and running then, or move to a different community and do something like we've done here. So as we invest ourselves in the country, continue to learn that we can pray that we can learn the language and be able to form strong relationships with these leaders, and an understanding that I can be brought into that tribe. I'm very much an outsider from the tribe still, even in the church. It's a tribal community, and so I'm working my way into that. And they're wonderful people, and I'm feeling very strong connections
Yeah.
and respect, mutual respect. But that's been a while coming, and we're learning it together. And so prayers for that. Prayers for my family, my children, as they make connections. They constantly need relationships and connections, especially with people back here. And that has to be deliberate, but a lot of times it has to be deliberate on both sides.
Yep.
And young people don't know how to deliberately be in a relationship with a young person in Albania, and the time zone 10 hours different makes it challenging. You just have to do it. So people that want to get their kids connected to my kids, they would love it.
Okay.
Play games with my son and talk over Discord, and like that would be a really big gift to me as a father, seeing my son look for that, and in ways that you can see them and tell them the same thing that I just said. A missionary needs to hear that I see what you're doing. It's the right work for you. Keep doing it. It's effective. Thank you. My children need to hear that, and people I don't think to include that what they're going to be seeing and recognizing.
And if someone wanted to financially partner with you guys, how would they do that?
Yeah, so our finances come through the Valley Church of Christ. There's a missions fund here. The Jason Gardner keeps track of that record, and then directs it to us. That's where our van fundraising is going right now. It's being collected and held there until we figure out how to use that chunk of money for a van.
And you guys are in need of one-time and monthly support.
So that's one-time and monthly support. We are greatly blessed. So it's difficult for me, but we were greatly blessed while we were here with my job and my work in the community here in Alaska. That made it secure for us to go and do something that is so insecure. But yeah, we one of the reasons why we haven't been back in 2 years, because you guys happen to live in the most beautiful place on earth, where everybody in the world saves for their entire life to take just them and their wife for a month vacation in Alaska. And so here I am with a family of 5 living in Albania, trying to find a way to go on a trip to Alaska along with all these tourists. It's expensive. And so that was one. We have to cut things out of our budget because of our one-time support. So just we can make that known, but I'm not complaining.
Sure.
That's real.
And I use the word partner on purpose, because it's not just financial donors. It's partnership, and partnering with what God is up to over there. And, and people want to. So.
And people are welcome to come visit. We had Barnabas Firth from the peninsula come and stay with us over the winter. Our situation is changing with Amers coming, so I don't know what I would be able to provide and for how long and what that would look like. But we get excited. I'm very serious about my role being a witness to what God is doing in Albania. And I struggle with how to do that. What are my avenues to get this message out and show people? And the most direct way would be for people to actually come and be there and to see it. I think it would be a real gift to them. And so if somebody is willing to do that and wants to come and see and to be a part of the work for a period of time, we're open to discussing that.
Wow, that's cool.
That'd be awesome.
Well, we love you immensely and your family. We're thrilled for what the Lord's doing, and definitely, if anyone here listening would like to get involved with connecting with you, we want to provide that information. Is there an email that they can keep in contact with you, or Facebook, or how should people keep in touch for either newsletters, updates, or if they have questions or things to help? How would they contact you?
So we have a newsletter list. If you want to be on that, you can email us at James Smith Family Mission, singular, jamessmithfamilymission@gmail.com, and let us know, and we'll get you on a newsletter list. And that's a primary way to communicate. We have WhatsApp numbers, which is our regular chat that we do. If somebody wants those numbers, I can get there right here, but We don't have to. We can look. They're on the screen. I don't know. How do you do it?
We can make the magic happen.
Yeah. Do that. And our more casual updates are on Facebook. If somebody wants to follow me on Facebook and see what our family's doing, or if they want to follow our Facebook group, we put regular updates there about events or snapshots of the work and what God's up to.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are the real deal, and it's refreshing just getting to sit and talk with you and to spend time with you and your family, and excited to see what God continues to do through you and what's going to happen in Albania. And we're looking forward to doing our best to stay in touch and to be present as best as we can too. So thank you, James, so much for taking time to be here.
This was great. I love you guys.
You too.
We love you too. Well, thank you for listening for this episode. God bless you, and stay in touch with James. Be in prayer for Albania, and we'll see you guys next time.